Today, we are talking about flipping houses, how to avoid some of the biggest pitfalls when you go in to flip a house. I'm speaking with Ray Burkhalter of REI Funding Partners. Ray, you're funding flips, you're helping people do that. But for so long before you did this, you were doing flips, you were holding rentals. So there's a lot that you've done in real estate. I would just like to kind of start off, just share a little bit about you and your journey and how it's gone from holding rentals to doing some flips and doing real estate to deciding on, hey, you know what, we want to start a business that helps other rehabbers flip houses. Why did you decide to do that? And just kind of take us through your journey as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. I never really expected to start a business, but I had an engineering career, and one of my bosses actually at the time handed me a copy of the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. And when I read that, that was my first realization that a thing called passive income existed. I just didn't grow up knowing about that. My best financial rule from my parents, which has turned out to be a very good one, is spend less than you make, which a lot of people find challenging, but that's been a great one. But it's very fundamental. So when I learned about passive income, I realized that in my engineering career, if I didn't add anything to that, the only way I was going to get passive income was wait until 25 years later and retire. And that wasn't so interesting. So I started studying real estate, and my wife had already been interested in it. And so that's how we started buying properties. My first intent was not to buy and hold, although now, all these years later, I look back and realize that's the wealth building side of it. But at the time, it seemed like buy and fix and sell was the way to go.
Just get the quick cash infusion.
Yeah, exactly. The flipping sounded great, and that's what we started off doing. We did that. Some of the ones that we were going to flip, we ended up holding for rental properties, and then we held some more along the way. We did every kind of creative deal because I started early with education for real estate investing and coaching, and so we learned how to do owner finance on the buying side, on the selling side, how to do subject to, how to do lease options, pure options, all of those things. And I wanted to try every one of them. I learned about land trust, so I wanted to learn how to do trust. And so all of that gave us a great background, and I didn't realize it at the time, but the fantastic background for what we do now as lenders who fund other people's projects. But I'd never really thought about doing that as a business model for several years. But one of the first educational trainings that I got was how to raise money for my deals. And I got pretty good at that, at raising all the capital for funding all of our deals. I really didn't go to the bank hardly ever to get funding for a deal. And so when I did learn about private lending as a business of its own, I had all of these sources of private money that had been funding our deals.
Right.
And I said, hey, what do you think about continuing this, but doing the same thing for other people's deals? And so that's how we got started with it, and it's grown from there.
It's a I don't want to say a unique background, but I think it's a unique background in the context of a lender, because a lot of lenders that I've experienced anyway, don't have that real estate background, that vast real estate background that you have. And you just mentioned it served you well. Can you kind of talk about how has it served you? Like, what are some things that maybe you've seen, and maybe you're because I know you're helping people too. You're not just funding their deals, you're actually helping them do their deals.
Right. Yeah. So in any business, you have other people in the same business that may or may not be competitors. For us as being local here in Alabama, funding projects, the kind of the challenge for us sometimes is these huge national companies that can come in and do business dirt cheap. But the person that you deal with on the phone, it's a kid in a cubicle in California. in most cases. They may be in Texas, they may be in the Northeast, they may be in New Jersey, but most of the time they're like you're saying, there's someone that doesn't really know about real estate, and probably they don't even own real estate. They probably rent an apartment and they're doing this job of originating loans for someone. So yes, we take the knowledge that we have on deal structuring, on build your profits in up front. So that, I mean, one of the tools that we share freely with our customers and even people who are not yet our customers is our max offer sheet, so that they can plug in a few numbers and see, here's the most I can offer for this property. Here are my costs up here, and then here's my profit at the top of what I want to make for that. So we've created numerous tools from our background, just slightly different versions of what we used to use when we're buying properties, and then made it available to people whose projects we're funding, right? Because our company purpose statement is to help our customers and clients achieve financial freedom and security. And we can't do that in one deal, right? We can help someone with a deal. We can help them get a project done, but we can't help them grow to financial freedom in funding one deal. So we're in this to meet people who they're already in motion, right? They're already doing some deals. They have some things going, but they're ready to scale up, and we're here to help them with multiple deals so that we can help them get to that outcome of financial freedom.
Yeah. And we're talking specifically about rehabbing and fix and flip. You mentioned earlier, though, that's not necessarily the key to wealth.
Right.
It might be holding properties. You mentioned that, and I'm just like, all the houses I wholesaled from 2012 to 2017. We were doing so much wholesale volume. If I would have just hung on to any of those, I just look back now and see what they're worth today. So building wealth as a rehabber, like, how do you kind of coach or kind of talk through some of your clients who are mostly rehabbers?
Yeah,
I'm assuming. How do you kind of coach them through where, hey, let's get some of this money and let's maybe put some aside and let's start buying rentals? I don't know, how is it that you actually kind of help them build that wealth?
Yeah, well, a good rehabber can put themselves easily in position to begin holding rental property if they want to. So the first thing is just that idea, because I've been at this for over 15 years now. A lot of the people that we work with are the next generation behind me, and sometimes they'll ask for, what have you learned in all of these years? And very often I come back to, I wish I would have kept so many of these properties. Maybe not every single one, right? There's always some dogs in there, but there's so many good ones that now they're worth double. They were worth 150 back then. They're worth 300 and more now. So just the first step is that awareness of that's the way to build wealth. And those good performing rental properties are going to give you passive income, whereas flipping properties is not passive. And they realize that. And then I talk to them about an idea of flip a couple and then hold the next one, or maybe flip 3 and hold one, or we can work with them to help them figure out that ratio. But just the idea that, hey, you're buying them wholesale and you're fixing them up at below market rate, pricing for the rehab. So you're in it. If you've done the numbers right, you should be in it at with a nice equity position, right? So you do a couple of those and you take the profits to keep yourself paid and keep the business healthy. But every third or fourth one, or whatever the numbers work out to be, they really line up well, because at that point they've got a property where they fixed all the major systems in it. It looks great. They rent it out. They really shouldn't have any major repairs for 10 plus years if they fixed HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and the roof. So they're in an excellent position to make money now from rehabbing and build wealth by doing those holds every few houses.
Yeah. So I just think back to all those houses that I bought, and then all the ones I didn't buy. You're talking about houses doubling in value. I remember those houses over in Center Point and Roebuck area where we're getting for 25, 30, 35,000. Those houses are worth over 200,000.
Right.
And it's just, it's kind of disheartening thinking about that. But so you're coaching some folks along. inevitably when you're lending, it doesn't happen often because you guys have a pretty rigorous system as far as like looking at the property, make sure it's good property, make sure the numbers work. But inevitably, you're going to have a couple of ones that, for whatever reason, you got to take them back or you've got to do something with this property. In those kind of situations, my question is what I'm getting to is, what are the pitfalls you're seeing? So in maybe some of these situations where maybe you've had to take some properties back or do something like that, or maybe it just in other situations, what are some of these really big mistakes? Maybe that you didn't see up front, they didn't see up front, or maybe they did, maybe it was questionable to begin with. I'm not sure. But what are some of these mistakes that some of these rehabbers are making right now that maybe we can kind of help people out with?
So the biggest one overall that I see is coming in underfunded, meaning not having enough cash to really see the deal through to the end. And I'll come back to that in a second because it's worth digging into.
Yes.
But probably the second one that we see, definitely much less frequently than that one, but not like the contractor not either finishing or doing things to standards so that it's not even passing code. We've got one right now where a borrower was like ready to put it on the market, and then he found that the deck that had gotten rebuilt didn't pass the code. And this same contractor, he had issues with other things not passing either. The plumbing rough end didn't pass, and so a bad contractor can cause real problems. But back to the financial piece. So one thing that we do up front when we quote, because you mentioned a moment ago kind of a rigorous process. Well, the reason we do that and the reason that it's so important is if someone comes to us and they bring a deal that they want to fund, we want to see it be successful, right? Because at the end of the day, if they do get it finished and if it turns out to be a struggle and they list it and sell it in the end, is the real estate agent going to get paid? Yes. Is the title company going to get paid? Yes. Are we going to get paid our payoff? Yes. Contractors are getting paid, but what about the rehabber, the one that put in all the work to do all this? They're not going to get paid if the after repaired value is not right, or if the rehab budget is off, or any of these factors that we check for. So it's a win for us when the project is successful. And if you're the borrower, when you're successful, you make a profit, then you're going to be able to come back and do your next project, and it's all good. So that level of strenuousness that we do is for the good of the project, which is for the borrower's good as well as our good. So on like the paperwork that we do right up front, where we show here's what we could lend you on this property, it's got the cash amount that they need to have, like the cash reserves that we say, hey, you should have this at a minimum, because we have seen things. We had one in Irondale a few months ago. The guy finished it, and he had some like other hardships with his job and stuff like that, but he got it. He barely got it across the finish line. He got all the punch list items at the end, got it done, got it listed, got it under contract. Then, as you know, and probably most of the people watching know, there's going to be a home inspection, right? So the home inspection happens, and they scoped the sewer line, and there was an issue, between the house and the street, and it had to be redone. Well, our customer was out of cash, and the quote on that was $8,500. So, what do? You're there, you're at the finish line, you just want it to sell, and because you were kind of bootstrapping things, it's at the end. And so we had him, we had told him how much he needed, and we had verified that he had it in the bank at one point. But what we didn't realize is he quit his job because he thought he was ready to be a full-time rehabber, and he wasn't. And we didn't even realize that he had quit his job until later. There's other people that run into that stuff too without quitting their jobs. But the other thing, I guess, that goes hand in hand with that is when people do have things going right, and then they're scaling up, and they want to do another deal and another and another, and then they're telling us, hey, we don't have enough money for a down payment or this, but could you just lend us the whole amount? And I'm like, you're building a house of cards here. If that the fact that you're out of money right now as far as enough to do the next project and feed it in, that's like the natural limitation that's telling you stop for now, finish out these projects, take the profit from that, and grow your cash reserves, and then you're ready to, instead of doing 2 houses at a time, now you're ready to do 3 at a time. So we've seen people scale too quickly, and then, man, when you're stretched that thin and you might have 4, 5, 6 projects going, but you don't have much cash in the bank, it only takes one of those $8,500 plumbing jobs, or something that you thought was going to sell for up here, and you get knocked down by your buyer or something like that, and it can start the dominoes.
It's such a cash intensive business. I mean, there's these large dollar amounts that come in, large dollar amounts go right back out. You just mentioned these items that might pop up and we're just not sure about. We didn't see it. We didn't plan for that. There's so many variables here. And then to try to balance that with the folks who are hearing, hey, you know what? I did my first flip on credit cards, or I did my first flip with this creative way where it cost me nothing out of pocket. Those I feel like flipping is a little bit different. It's not like going to get a property subject to no money out of your own pocket, which we could obviously both argue you need cash reserves for rental properties as well. But there's so many folks that want to get into this business, and they may not have a whole lot of resources to begin with. And they maybe find a lender. Oh, you're not going to lend me 100%. Maybe I'll go find a lender that will, and they get themselves into trouble. So, and I feel like you've kind of already answered this, but if you are brand new, would you recommend flipping a house? Kind of give me your thoughts on somebody who's newer, watching this. I don't have a whole lot of resources, but I want to learn how to flip houses.
Yeah, and we see that, probably every month. We're doing 10, 12, 14 loans a month on properties here in Alabama. So we see people from very experienced to on the low end. The ones that we've seen be more successful with less experience have some kind of contractor type background. We've got 2 in our pipeline right now, and both of these guys, they have businesses related to, like, one guy's an HVAC contractor, so they've been around the construction, right, and they probably know some of the other subs that would be needed to get a project done. And what they have this this expertise on the property, and what they don't necessarily have in a lot of cases is, how do you do the business side? Like, how do you quote the whole thing overall? How do you know what it's like? Those guys are the ones that very often miss the after repaired value. In their own mind, they think, it's going to sell for $275 because an agent that wasn't really a highly professional agent did some kind of desktop review and gave them some kind of CMA, market analysis that they didn't really look at. They just sent them a PDF straight out of the system, and it's just way off base. We look at each one. We look at it in depth. We get a third-party report on it. Like, we're really looking to make sure the numbers are right. But that's where a background of having something to do with real estate will help. So if you've had that kind of background and you've built up cash in your HVAC business, so you got some cash reserves and you've got some understanding of what has to happen on a rehab project, we can help with that. If it's somebody that doesn't have a kind of background like that, maybe they're more on the number side. Maybe they've kind of got that from some, YouTube education or some other places. If they don't have that contractor side, what we often recommend them to at least check out is partner up with someone that has the piece of the deal that you don't have, right? So somebody's got to be able to find it. Somebody's got to be able to do the project management. Somebody's got to have the money to put into it to make it work. And so we've seen people be successful with kind of breaking apart the elements of a good rehab and let 2 or 3 people come together who have these different strengths do that, right? Maybe somebody's willing to put in all the work to find the deal and be the project manager, and someone else is willing to put in the cash and kind of bring the business savvy.
Yeah.
So very often that can work out well, because this person, maybe they don't have the time. Maybe they're working full time and they don't have time to go out and find a deal or go do the project management or run to the hardware store and get supplies, but this other person does. So it could be a win-win there.
Yeah.
But this person then can get the experience that they need without having to take all the risk.
For sure. And something I've talked to people about all the time is, I don't know that house flipping or buying a house, rehabbing it, reselling it, that whole process, trying to handle contractors, which I want to get back to. I want to talk about that for a second. How to talk to a contractor, how to properly look at a scope of work and create a scope of work, how to work with a realtor even. You don't know any of those things in the beginning. And what I've always recommended to people is go wholesale, or not even necessarily go and try to wholesale, but learn how to find a discounted property.
Right.
Like learning the skill of finding a discounted property that will serve you no matter what you decide to do in real estate. If you decide to flip a house, if you want to buy and hold, you do want to, you want to wholesale, whatever it might be, learning that skill alone is going to translate to all facets of real estate. Yeah. So learn that skill, maybe wholesale a deal or two, or learn that skill, maybe become a realtor. Learn that skill, become a realtor. Find other skills that you can learn first and almost like build up to. Go volunteer to help somebody. Volunteer, just be on a job site. I know there's lots of folks in our town that will gladly let you ride around with them and just kind of see things for yourself. So there's lots of different ways you can get involved and learn the business. So the first thing I ever did in real estate is I wholesaled a deal.
Yeah.
My first thing I ever did.
Yeah, and rehabbing is not for everyone, right? It's almost like it's in your blood or it's not, because some people love like the redesign of the house, and they love the demo aspect of it, and they love seeing things come together. And if that's your cup of tea, great. That could be a good side of real estate to get into. But I think other people maybe don't necessarily love it, but they think, wow, they see people making 30, 50. We have people sometimes making $100,000 on houses that they rehab and sell for high 300s or in the 400s. And they see that, right? They see these checks and dollar signs, and just getting into it for money is not the best reason. But if you love working on the houses and that aspect of it, then great. But
the person who made 6 figures on a flip had to know how to find a good deal.
Right.
Like they had to have that skill first.
Yep.
And they found a phenomenal deal, because you make the money on the buy, is my opinion. You hear that all the time, but you make the money when you buy it. When you buy it, you found such a great deal, you can make those kind of paydays. But I want to go back. I want to talk about both those points that you made, the kind of the pitfalls that we see rehabbers make. One is just the money, which is it's a really difficult thing to manage, especially if you've never done it before. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about contractors. I want to talk about both of those. So let's talk about the money. Are you seeing, I guess, how would you advise folks? Maybe they've done flips. Maybe they've got experience doing flips, but they've never had somebody come along. And because most lenders, or if you're using a private lender, a private individual, they're not going to be as, I guess, involved as you guys are. And again, you already said you're involved because you want to make sure everybody's making money. You want to make sure the project is a good project.
Safe project
for everybody, so everybody can make money. But a lot of the private lenders, they're not really, they just want to kind of be hands off, and you're just kind of, so maybe you've had a house flipper that's done half a dozen deals, but they've never been with someone so structured. You recall maybe a circumstance like that. How do you coach them? How do you advise them to kind of, hey, let's bring in a little bit of structure here?
For most, they're ready for it, right? Because they're doing enough volume that we've had people say, man, you're just conforming to your processes has helped my business, just because of what you guys need up front and then through the draw process and everything. Other people, not so much. It's like they can't read the email that says, here's the 5 things that we need to get your loan started. And for those people, it's a little bit scary that they're flipping houses to start with, but sometimes they can overcome it with sheer hard work. But yeah, for a lot of people, and especially for our ideal customer, they welcome it. They welcome, because they understand that the way they've been doing it is maybe a little hectic, maybe a little unorganized, maybe a little undercapitalized, right? It's we have a program where we help some people that are a little bit advanced in their business. I've got the book Traction here. This is what has helped us to really put a foundation and scale up our private lending business. And we help people with principles from this, but customized for how to scale up a house flipping business. And we've seen them, begin to adopt this and begin to put aside money from their flips for taxes, right? Because if you're self-employed and you're not yet paying quarterly taxes, it's coming. You better be prepared to do that. If you're flipping a house and you think that $40,000 check that you just got is all yours, and you go spend it, you got some bad news coming later, right? So you got to do certain things, and so we teach them. What does your business budget need to look like when you pay off a flip, and then how do you build cash reserves? How do you take a piece of that and put back? And it's very gratifying to see them start to do those things and their business get next level healthy.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking, what are some good things you're saying? What are some qualities of a really good house? Because the whole time you're talking, I'm thinking, man, that takes discipline. Oh yeah, that takes discipline. Oh yeah, that takes discipline. So that's the word that kept coming to my head, is like just being disciplined with your processes, being disciplined, being organized, being disciplined, obviously, with your money. So what are some good qualities? What makes a great house flipper?
It's a business model that really needs a pretty good level of organization, right? When you go out on the front end and review a house, you really need to be able, in that one trip, to get a good scope of work and to know, is this a $40,000 rehab? Is it a $50,000 rehab? Because you got to make your offer from that, and then be able to process it afterwards, right? So project management is another piece of that requires organization. If you're going to do this well and have multiple properties at once and really make as much profit as you can, you need to know when you come in how many weeks this project is. Not just come in and say, with no idea of when the end date. We when people ask for our opinion, or if they're in this program, we say up front, after you finish your scope of work, talk to your contractors and find out how many weeks is this project going to be, and literally put a project calendar up on the job site so that they can see and you can see what's supposed to happen week by week. When are the painters coming in? When are the flooring people coming in? When are different things supposed to happen so that people are not on top of each other, and for accountability. So, it's all of those things. Getting the scope of work right, as you mentioned before. That's something that improves over time as you do a job and you see, I didn't, have this price just right, or I left off. It's amazing how often people leave off things like landscaping. They don't put any budget in there for it, and they get to the end and they realize, hey, the rest of the house looks great, but it's missing some of that curb appeal. And then they got to throw in another $1,500 out of their pocket for landscaping. So just those kind of organizational skills, the people that we have seen do it the best, they can be in and out in a few weeks because that's the approach they take. And they have the mindset of this house should never sit for over 2 days in a row and not have people there working on it. And then we've had others that, not so successful, that it might sit there for 2 weeks and nobody's over there working on it.
And it's money, right? I mean,
there's holding costs.
Every
definitely.
day that goes by, you got holding costs. You're talking about what you're paying the lender, but shoot, what you're paying the
insurance, you got utilities, you got property. Property tax you're not forking out every month, but it's going to hit when you sell it. So it's a real expense.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So
yeah, no, I mean, you're sitting here talking like these are all the facets of creating a successful house flipping business or rehabbing business. And this is not just like, hey, I'm going to go wholesale a house,
right?
Where there's really not a whole lot of risk, if any at all, right? But with this, you're sitting here, you've bought a property either in your name, probably in an LLC, but you're owning a property, and now you're owning all these processes, all these things that are happening. This project that you're trying to get across the finish line over this timeline, you are taking ownership of this living, breathing thing and trying to create something and
right.
just to be able to sell. You mentioned project manager. I would love for you to define that and what makes a good project manager. Probably in the beginning, because you mentioned traction, all the different hats. Think of like an org chart, right? An organizational chart where there's all these different hats of all these different things that have to get done in a project, in a rehabbing business. So as project manager, if you have one flip going on, you're the project manager, right? You probably need so many, and I would love for you to kind of define that. What is a project manager's roles and responsibilities as you see it?
Yeah, the way we've defined it, the project manager is the person that's going to be on the job site daily or frequently otherwise. They may be tuning in through video to check and see what's going on. But if anyone listening to this has done a rehab or been around it, things change. Your plumber doesn't show up when they're supposed to, or your painter doesn't, or you tear out some of a wall and there's a decision that has to be made. Do we tear the whole wall out? Do we keep it because there's some kind of piping that's coming up through the wall that nobody knew about inside of that? Or so someone that has decision-making abilities has to be on site and keeping it on schedule, right? Mm-hmm. So a big piece of project management that I think that the average rehabber doesn't do is that project management calendar. Mm-hmm. They just get in there and they're busting their tail to get the work done, but it's not really, you don't know if you're behind schedule or ahead of schedule if you haven't said we want to finish this in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it may be for that project. But you don't know, and your crews don't know if you're on time or not if you don't have a schedule like that. So to me, that's a big piece of project management. If you're a smaller operation, that project manager is probably the one that's going to go to pick up some of the supplies. Some of the subs can go get their own things if it's specialized for plumbing or electrical or whatever. But if it's general supplies that you need, very often they're going to go get those to keep the job moving ahead, right? That's their thing, is let's keep it on schedule. Let's keep, the workers busy while they're here, because the last thing you want is to run out of materials and then they go to another job site and they're gone for 3 days.
That's definitely worst case scenario. Well, what if they're the ones that take off and go to a Home Depot or a Lowe's, and then you just lost 4 hours because by the time they get there and they get back, maybe they need something else. They go there and they get back. Maybe they decide to get lunch. Yeah. You just lost 3 or 4 hours just because they made a Home Depot run.
Right. Yeah.
So there's lots of different things. Or what other hats or what other roles and responsibilities are there in a rehabbing business, where probably if you're doing one at a time, it's probably you, but just as you get bigger, maybe you can start to hire some of these pieces out. What are some of these important roles?
Right. So just kind of quickly, front to back, you've got to find the deal. Like you've already mentioned a few times, you've got to be able to get it underpriced. Somebody, and to me, it's the rehabber, the business owner for quite a while. They need to be the one running the numbers. Like they've got to know that we're buying it at the right price, considering how much it's going to cost to fix it up and what it's going to resell for are appraised for at the end if it's going to be one of our hold properties. So knowing the numbers and being able to do the marketing, or, we tell people just get it from a wholesaler, get it from a real estate agent that knows what you're looking for. Let them do the work. It's like marketing that you don't pay for until you get results, right? You've done a ton of marketing, and I have as well in my business, and there's a lot of marketing you pay for and you hope you get a return on it. If you're buying something wholesale, you're going to pay that wholesale fee, but you got a contract, you've got the house, it's guaranteed. So the marketing piece, getting it at the right price. Then from there, it is that project management piece. It's that somebody's got to have a design eye in this. So it's some rehabbers have that, but sometimes you need some outside input sometimes to know that you're putting the right things and you're making an attractive product. You've got to be able to manage the business side of it. So as you mentioned before, a lot of money coming in and out, right? You've got the cost of the house and the closing up front. You got to pay the bills while you're holding it, and you've got money flowing out, for the different supplies. Now that's where one of the pieces of our system comes in really handy, because for most of the projects that we fund, we're funding 100% of the rehab budget as well. And so we don't just hand a borrower $50,000 for rehab and say, here you go, hope this goes well. Send us some pictures when you're done. Let us know how it turned out. No, we do it by phases. So they do some of the work, and then it gets inspected, and we pay them for it. It's like a couple of days turnaround. It's very fast, but what it does is it gets video capture of the process, where the house is in the process, and then we also require lien waiver releases. Which means, if, let's say for a moment, that you're the sub and you did some work, maybe you put some floors in at my rehab house, and I'm the rehabber, and I pay you $5,500. When I pay you, you sign that saying, yes, Ray, you really did pay me for that, and I'm paid in full for this part of the project. Well, now you can't come back later and legally put a mechanics lien on my property for that, because I've got proof that I paid you for this. Those kind of things happen. I've got, someone just pinged us a couple of days ago and said, hey, we're in a lawsuit with one of the contractors that didn't perform on some things, and I need that proof. I'm like, we got it in the file. We got their signature on there saying that they were paid. So those kind of things, come in handy. But the business side of it is big. You really have to keep the books. You got to know all of that. So, and the last piece would be, getting it sold.
Right.
If you're going to flip it. So not overly complex as far as what has to happen. It's just as you begin to scale up, the complexity, yes, on the job side of making sure that it all gets done. But
you just named about 15 or 20 things. I mean, it's just, it's vastly more complex than wholesaling a deal.
1,000% it is, but you can almost break it down into three categories: the marketing to get the deal,
yes;
the operations in the middle means this is where we're making the property look great again, and then over here on this is the financial side that's tracking it.
Yes.
Now in the beginning, yes, you've got to wear all those hats and do that, but as you begin to scale up, you may get a part-time project manager to help. So you're not out there running to the hardware store all the time. And then if you're doing what I just recommended a moment ago of getting properties from either agents or wholesalers, now I'm not out having to drive for dollars. I'm not out, having to look at a bunch of properties that, trying to find that good deal.
Right.
Just let somebody else that's really good at that do that for me, and it minimizes. I don't have to go hire someone on the marketing side. Yeah. In that case. So hiring a part-time bookkeeper would probably, it'd be neck and neck between whether you get a project manager first or a bookkeeper, because there are so many transactions, and you really don't want to go to your accountant at the end of the year and hand them a shoebox full of receipts.
Or a printout of all the expenses, which
and they don't know which house it went to.
Right. No, exactly.
I spent $175,000 at Lowe's.
Right.
For what?
Yeah, exactly. So, and we haven't really talked about contractors too much, and you've kind of painted this picture. And I guess when I said vastly more complex than a wholesale deal, I was more saying that to say, if you're brand new, this may not be something that you want to just dive right into it in the beginning, unless you do, like Ray said earlier, have one of those backgrounds. But contractors, this always seems to be a tricky subject. And, somebody who I've looked up to for many years has told me, look, if you're a rehabber, you're not going to get the A contractor. You're just not getting that guy. You can't afford him. The project can't afford that. So you're probably dealing with these C-level contractors or workers. And so, because you can't afford to pay these, the guys that you would find in the, you Google search, right, these folks, you're probably not going to afford to pay those guys. So you're dealing with C-level people to begin with. So any tips, advice on how to find somebody? Do you try to find somebody who can do it all, who maybe has that person has the home builder's license and they can go sub everything out? Do you like to try to, and this might even be a separate question, do we as the rehabber, do you recommend us going to get the home builder license and we kind of sub everything out? Kind of take us through what you've seen and maybe mistakes you've seen people make and maybe what you would recommend.
Yeah, I'll start with do you get one person that does it all? That really depends on how much time you have to put into it. We have people who have a job, they got a full-time job, and they're doing a couple of flips a year on the side. If they don't have enough time off of their job or the flexibility to do it, then they've kind of got to hire that contractor that's going to do, all of it. We have other people that, they've got the time availability and they can go in and be more of the one that, they're hiring their own subs for their house. So either way can work. It just kind of depends on how much time you have available to spend at the property. Mm-hmm. The challenges that we've seen, the first rookie mistake is paying for work that hasn't been done. I don't know if I've experienced it. I won't say I haven't, but I've definitely seen other people pay for work and then that contractor never shows back up. Mm-hmm. I need a third of the money up front, or I need half of it up front.
Yeah, because I got to pay for materials.
Yeah. And sometimes that works. I mean, we've got an Airbnb property in Georgia, and just this week, they needed some money up front. They're putting new mulch out, and so I then mowed them some money, and then but I've got a track record with them, and, sure, and it worked out okay. But you've got other people that they come in and bid a $30,000 rehab job, and they want $10,000 up front before any work is done. Mm. We were helping somebody get a house across the finish line that had kind of stalled out in the middle of the project, and they had to bring in a new contractor. And that contractor was trying to delegate that, and they thought we were going to provide the money for that. And I said, hey, it's not happening. If you 100% want to use that contractor, you got to come up with the money out of pocket to give to them, because we're not going to give it to them until the work's done. Mm-hmm. And we'll stroke that check the day of when the work is done and it's good, and we pay them and they sign off on the lien waiver release. Fine, but that's a pitfall sometimes with contractors. Especially if someone's out of state, and here in Alabama and especially in Birmingham, it's I don't know, it's kind of a magnet, right, for out of state people, whether they're buying turnkey properties or they see Alabama as a great place to just flip remote.
Are you working with folks, by the way, that are doing that?
We work with a guy out of Canada that does some.
Gosh, okay.
And he's doing okay, but then we've seen other people struggle with it. So it's the quality of your contractor matters. Because that one lady, she worked with a contractor. They did a great job on the first one, and then they just kind of fell apart on the second one. And she's stuck and having to kind of wholesale it and going to lose some money on it. So you're right with the story of you're not going to go out and hire the person that's all over the internet and they've got the branded trucks and you're not getting that person. But I wouldn't say you're dealing necessarily with a C quality contractor. The ones that I've seen work really well for our rehabber customers are the ones that they build a relationship with that contractor and they say, look, hey, I'm going to do 6 rehabs this year. I'm going to keep your crews busy. We're going to be able, as we're finishing this one, I'm going to have the next one purchased. We'll be over there doing the scope of work, and your guys can go from here to here, and that can work really well. You begin to know, their pricing, how fast they work, do they do what they say, and things like that.
How soon should someone get their home builder's license? So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the state of Alabama, in order to be able to pull permits, you need a home builder's license.
Yeah. The people that we work with, they're typically hiring someone that can do that.
Okay.
Now, some people that we lend to, they do have that license and they do it, but generally not just for their properties, right? They're some kind of sub or general contractor, and they're being, they have that ability so they can do it for other people's jobs. And so it shows up on their job. But most of the people, if we're funding their project and they're not that contractor, they're hiring an electrician that can pull the permits for that. They're hiring the deck builder that can pull a permit for that, plumber that's going to pull their permit. So that's the way that we see more often.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is a lot, and I've talked to people in the past. I've had conversations with folks in the past who are lenders, and we've had some really old interviews on our channel with different lenders, and we really only talk about money, and so it's a short conversation, usually always. And this has been really good because we're getting to be able to. We have a lender here. We're getting to see kind of everything. We're getting to see how a rehab actually works from the perspective of someone who's trying to help you build a business. So I appreciate you kind of doing all this. Is there anything I've left out? Anything from the standpoint of from the lending side, and then from I'm actually like completing a project? Any stories you want to share? Anything come to mind? I hate to put you on the spot like that.
There's so many stories. We've seen success stories of people making those 6-figure flips, and then we've seen people with things fall off the rails, and usually if it falls off the rails, it is because they didn't have enough money up front to do the project, or some life circumstances changed in between. But man, we've seen, I guess. A quick pitfall story that I would share, and this is from people that had some money up front. We've had people come to us before, and they had previously bought a house for cash to renovate, and then they came to us to do the loan to free up some of that cash. Right? Maybe they just spent $75,000 on this house, and it took most of their capital, and they're like, "Wait a minute, I don't have enough liquidity now to finish this out." So they come to us to refi back out a good portion of their money so that they can, move ahead with the project. There's been multiple times where we've seen people not go through a title company and get title insurance. And so, but when you buy cash, you don't necessarily have to, right? There's no lender on the other side requiring it. And we've seen people with title issues, like, when my wife and I first started, we didn't always get title insurance because we didn't understand the need for it. Now, sitting on the other side of it and 500 transactions in, I've seen countless title issues. We're holding up on one right now in a really nice neighborhood in Birmingham, and it's had title issues, and the guy's waiting to close on it, and it's hanging out there. We've got another young lady that's a heck of a rehabber and wholesaler, and she's really good at finding these deals, but over the past probably 3 months, it seems like at least 50% of the deals that she brings in, um, when we end up heading to the closing table, title issue, this issue.
Yeah, and
So,
wholesale type of properties, when you're dealing with probate potentially, and you're multiple heirs, you're dealing
right,
with properties that haven't been sold for a very long time, so have to go far back in time. You're going lien tax deed type of
right,
issues. You're gonna see that's common from a wholesaling standpoint. But if I know as a rehabber that I'm gonna sell this property on the back end, like I have to buy it with title insurance. That just doesn't even.
yeah, yeah. You know that, but not everyone does. Hence
No, that doesn't even come into
the
mind.
the pitfall there. But yeah, I mean, a wholesaler tip: start title early. Some
Oh
of the
yeah,
best
yeah.
ones that we've done, right? Because in many cases when people come to us and they get a house under contract, they need to close it in 10 days. It always works best if the person they're getting it from has already gotten the title work started,
Yes.
because then you're a couple of days, or maybe it's already complete even by the time we come into the picture.
Yes, for sure.
So that's a pro tip for
Yeah.
wholesalers. Start the title early.
Ray, how do people get a hold of you guys for funding, or if that? I know you mentioned some tools.
Right.
Is there some stuff that folks can? How can they get a hold of some of these tools and some of these resources you
Yep.
have?
REIFundingPartners.com is a good way to connect with us. Parker Grissom does all of our loan quotes and originations, and he's a hands-on rehabber himself.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that I've talked about, he's having those conversations with people and helping them. And if they need that free deal analyzer, the max offer tool, he'll get them to the webpage for that, where they can see a short video showing exactly how you use this tool, and they can download it and use it, analyze their deals. Parker at REI Funding Partners is a great place for if somebody's got a deal and they want him to take a look at it. Yeah.
We'll put all that in the description. Before we go, I do want to mention one last thing, because Ray, you've been a part of our masterminds for going back since I started them. I mean, 2017 was when I started our first one, and you've been so generous. I just want to thank you for all the folks that come into our groups, our smaller groups. You just pour into them, and you've always had a heart for doing that. You're in Tuscaloosa, which is where we're at today, and you drive to Birmingham. I just take a minute and talk about the power of being in a smaller group and what that can do for your folks' real estate businesses.
It really can be the difference between success or not. For us even, if we think all the way back to that 2017 time frame, at that point it was still just me and my wife doing this lending business, and she was doing all the bookkeeping. And I've tried to tell her at that time, hey, you can't keep doing all of this if we're gonna scale. We've got to get some help with that. But in a husband-wife business, you don't always hear each other. So you told Gail at one point, hey, you can actually hire someone to do this, and you
I
don't
didn't
have
tell
to do
her.
all of
I
that.
kindly suggested.
You put the idea out there that it was possible. But that was a big breakthrough for her. That opened the conversation up for us to say, what would it look like to hire someone part-time? And that comes out of being in groups. I've made friendships and business connections and people that I can call on, and it's interesting because you can find one person in a group like that that's helpful, and then they may have 3 or 4 friends that can be different resources for your business. Bruce Glenn is a guy that's been in the group with us, and I called on him last week. I had a really high dollar house that we were looking at using as collateral, and I said, Bruce, I know you know this neighborhood. Tell me what you think about this. And he took 15 minutes to just talk all the way through it with me, and the relationships that you build in those groups are extremely valuable.
Yeah.
So just even raising the ceiling of your mindset of what's possible, it's tremendous. So I'm a big believer in entrepreneurs coming together and learning and challenging one another and helping one another.
For sure. Thank you. And thank you for everything you've done for the
Absolutely.
real estate community, because you're talking about all the benefits you got from being in it, but you've poured so much into our groups and our big group that meets, on a second Tuesday night of every month at the Vestavia Civic Center.
Right.
You've poured into our folks, and that's why known you. You were one of the very first people that ever called me when I got to Birmingham, when I started wholesaling in Birmingham, 2012 or 13, because it was in the very beginning. You and Gail called me up and said, "Hey, we'd love to sit down with you and have lunch with you." And you didn't even know who I was. You just knew I was active.
Yeah, you were doing some wholesales.
So you wanted to get to know me, and you've always been gracious. And this is going back, my entire real estate career. So appreciate you so much. I'm going to link everything up in the description, so you can get a hold of Ray, you can get a hold of Parker, and get a hold of REI Funding Partners for your next flip. Hopefully you guys learned something today, because I definitely did, and we appreciate you, Ray. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, loved it.
All right, see you guys.